This was the Democrats' utter loss of working class, non-educated voters. This was what turned the election. It was like average working class people had
Yeah.
a choice between a fucking prick and people who they think look down on them. And they chose the prick. And Democrats need to address this.
Hello and welcome to Eric McElroy's American Exchange with me, Eric McElroy. It's our first podcast of 2025, and we are just days away from the inauguration of I don't even want to say it. But we had a great conversation with Joe Walsh, our original guest, former congressman, author, and the podcastee, the podcast Social Contract. Joe spent the last few months campaigning actively for Kamala Harris, did everything that he could to try and stop Trump from coming back, fought the good fight, and we were so glad to have him. I mean, I think having the Republicans for Harris, which he is a part of because he's a former Republican congressman, former Tea Party Republican, who in 2017 said he had had enough of Donald Trump and has spent his time and career and energy doing everything he can to stop Trump from doing the things that Trump does. So we didn't get it quite across the line, obviously, this time. So it's a chance to catch up with Joe. I talked to him about how he felt campaigning with Democrats, what it was like being with Bill Clinton. It was strange, I'm sure, and also what he thinks has happened and what needs to happen as we go forward as Trump returns to office. As always, it's an incredible conversation. Joe is frank, he's funny, and he's a brilliant person to talk to. So please enjoy Joe Walsh. Oh, and if you're watching this on YouTube, this is your chance to subscribe. So hit that button and check out other content we have, including my comedy clips. So make sure you check that out as well. I'm excited to have back on the podcast our first ever guest, one of our favorite guests, Joe Walsh. The last time I talked to you, Joe, I'm going to put a little bit on you here. We spoke in September of 2024,
Okay.
and you guaranteed me that democracy would be saved. And so
Oh,
what
fuck.
happened? I want to know because you're always such an optimist. You promised me you would save fascism, or keep fascism at bay in America. Personally, what the fuck happened,
Eric,
Joe?
I owe you the biggest apology.
You did
Um,
not promise me that. I know you
I
didn't.
know, I know. Hey, by the way,
Uh,
great to be with you. And I will
yeah.
take to my grave two things. I was a member of the United States Congress, and I was Eric McElroy's very first guest. So I am extremely proud.
I mean,
Um,
those two things are very similar.
they are
Yep.
honors.
Yes.
Uh, um, September feels like 10 years ago. For 3 months, Eric, I campaigned every single day in a battleground state for her
Mm,
against him. And I got in a bubble where I thought, okay, he's a prick. He's the worst of us. She's appealing to our better angels. There's no fucking way this country will put him back in the White House. But I always knew and I always believed it could happen. And
yep.
I always heard every day anger about issues that Kamala and the Democrats were kind of not talking about. So I wasn't surprised he won, but I still thought, Eric, even though I knew Democrats had issues and even though I knew Biden fucked up, by the way, Biden deserves 99% of the blame on the Democratic side. Kamala Harris doesn't deserve any blame.
Mm,
I still thought, even with all of that, the country won't put this horrible human being back in the White House, but they did.
yep. I mean, the people that I was asking, I think that over the years of doing this podcast, when I've reached across and I've done, like, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? It's the sense of because again, I'm over in the UK, so everything I'm getting is remotely consumed. I was in Philadelphia right before the election with a family wedding, so just got a little bit of vibe, but not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but people guessed correctly, that we do pretty good in the midterms with under Biden, and we Democrats didn't win back the House, but they didn't do it. There was no red wave in 2022.
Yeah.
There was a good sense there, and the people who I've had on this podcast, generally did have a sense that she was going to bring it over the line. I have to say, Essie Cupp was the one who was still very hesitant because she was doing her show Battleground,
Yeah.
and she was there talking to I think she tried to talk to a lot of non-politicians, and she was nervous. But like you, I think it just felt that there was enough done. But yeah, I think I've heard you say this, that 3 months is not enough for a candidate to introduce themselves to the American people, which is all that Kamala got. And with
We're
a country so big.
so big. And I know you know this because you're so familiar with the States. I still think most people in Europe don't understand how big this place is.
Mm,
Um, Look, we're living, you're living, I'm living, the world's living in a populist moment. Average regular people are pissed off. Um, now Trump's a demagogue and he's an evil populist and he lies to these people about the things they're pissed off about. But the
yep.
Democrats have like ignored this populist moment. And I've said on TV in the last couple of months, what happened was because this is what they would tell me every day in Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. They would say to me, Joe, I mean, literally, Eric, they would say this. I know he's a fucking asshole. I
Mm.
know he's a bad guy. But damn it, we've got people coming across the border. Eggs are like $39 a dozen. Joe, what the fuck? What am I supposed to do? And Biden, they weren't truthful with us about how old Biden is. Joe, I know Trump's a bad guy, but there was always, I know he's bad, but. And
Mm.
I heard that over and over and over. So America chose the bad guy, the asshole, literally, over the party that they felt was out of touch. And Kamala
Now,
did her best in 3 months to try to do something about that.
yeah, and I'm sure there's the niggly criticisms of her and answering one question wrong on The View and all that. But that's just, I mean, when you say she answered one question wrong on The View, Trump is literally doing speeches where he is mouthing, giving oral sex to a fucking microphone.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
double standard of what he could do, and the media would just shrug and not, but she answers a question slightly poorly, and that's,
Eric, can I back us up for 1 second?
yeah,
Because you just alluded to it. I said 3 years ago that if Trump is able to be normalized again,
yeah.
he will run for president. He'll easily get the nomination and he'll probably get reelected. I mean, Eric, think about it. 3 days ago, we celebrated the anniversary of a violent attempt to overthrow an American election, all caused by the only president in American history who lost an election and said, fuck you, I refuse to accept the result. Now, with hindsight, that January 6th should have made Donald Trump a pariah.
Yep.
I mean, and now get out of here, go to Siberia for the rest of your life. The fact that didn't, again, should have told everybody it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter how much he lies. It doesn't matter how cruel he is. It doesn't matter if he says migrants are eating cats and dogs. None of that matters. He tried to overthrow an election and you made him the nominee again.
Mm.
So it's just, there's so much bad about him, Eric, that we normalize it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. It's infuriating, and I think because there are moments where it felt like I think that I know that I'm guessing that you don't agree with how much misogyny and racism played into this with Kamala being a woman and being black and Indian, but watching that debate where she fucking spanked him, she ran him over. I mean, she grabbed him like a bitch. It was beautiful to watch. I wonder if there weren't some men who watched that and that bothered them to see an alpha male spanked like that.
So you and I probably disagree. I think racism, sexism, misogyny played a role.
Yeah.
You and I would probably disagree on the size of that role. But Eric, like that moment in that debate, like she kicked his butt in the debate, not even close.
Yep.
And I was watching that debate in Arizona, campaigning for her with a bunch of smart, college educated, wealthy suburbanites who, like, during that debate, they spent the whole debate laughing at Trump. I mean, just look at this guy. He's an idiot. But then the next day in Arizona, I talked to working class people in Arizona who watched that debate, and they said, you know what? Fuck it. He's talking about migrants. I mean, the cats and dog shit. You know, Joe, there is some evidence. Blah 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 blah.
Uh,
They weren't laughing at what he said, and again, that just to me just showed the absolute utter divide in this country.
I mean, but I mean, if people can't see what's in front of them, well, let's set that aside for a second. I want to ask you on the personal side of things first, and then
Yeah.
we'll go back into the larger scale. I mean, it was incredible to see you campaigning. I was following where you were at, popping up around the country. I've told you before that I have appreciated since we met. You standing up for what you believe in and going. It would have been easy for you to stay on that right wing train. You
Oh
know it,
no. I
and
wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'd be
oh
like a gazillionaire. Forget you. Yeah.
yeah. So and how lucky you are to not be rich, but talking to me. The trade-offs. My wife has made the same trade-off in a way. But anyway, how is it for you to be campaigning, for a Democrat? Meeting you. I know you campaigned with Clinton. You campaigned with Kamala's husband, Doug. Like how surreal was that world? And was it a good feeling? Well, I know you're fighting for what you believe in, but how strange was it?
So it is odd and it is bizarre because I'm not a Democrat and I'm not
Yeah.
on the left. I did it in 20. I came out of the closet, obviously, in 2020 and campaigned for Biden, but that was COVID. So there wasn't a lot of on the ground campaigning. Eric, I've never worked this hard in my life to get any candidate elected besides myself. And especially, I've never worked this hard to get a Democrat elected. I was out in a battleground state every day for 3 months. It was exhausting. It was weird. Uh, because I'm in this weird place where obviously the right hates me now because I'm a traitor, but like I'm not fully embraced by the left. Like we do these Republicans for Harris events, and I did one a couple with Doug Emhoff, Kamala's husband, and Bill Clinton and others, and there was a respectful, but I still wasn't part of the club. I was like
Mm,
this oddity, this Republican for Harris. So I felt kind of homeless doing it, uh,
yeah.
but a righteous cause.
Mm,
And I would, Eric, you and I spoke a long time ago. If Joe Biden had still been the candidate, I'd done the same thing. If Joe Biden were 150 years old,
yeah.
I'd be doing the same thing. It was, I'll tell you what, Eric, it was a lot of fun. It was more fun to campaign for her than it would have
Mm,
been for Joe Biden.
yeah.
Um, she really grew as a candidate. I
Mm,
really was impressed with how she grew in 3 months. She generated a lot of enthusiasm. And last thing I'll say is she really did, and she's getting hammered for this politically. She reached out to Joe Walsh and Adam Kinzinger and Liz
yeah.
Cheney. This Republicans for Harris thing became a big deal. Now, the left is pissed at her now for doing it, but I give her a lot of credit. I still think it was the right move to try to create a bigger tent.
I thought so. I mean, I've always been more of a centrist, and
Yeah.
bringing people together, and even during the course of this podcast, I would have, if it was a normal time, I'd want to have more Republicans on and have people to go back and forth with. But the problem is, most Republicans now, deny reality and the election. That Trump won in 2020. So I don't. What's the point in talking to people who are in fucking lying? And I know they're lying, but they won't do it because this is a public space. Um, but I like talking to people of different views. I've always been engaged with that. So I thought this broad coalition that was together, seeing her bring in the Cheneys, who, are not the most popular people in the world, but
No.
I was hoping would validate and give permission structures for moderate Republicans to step in to vote for her. That was the strategy, and it makes sense. You're having someone like you who could speak the language of the right and engage. That made sense to me.
And
And
it
Bernie was
helped.
on board, and Bernie
Yeah.
embraced it. It wasn't like they were shitting on her for it either.
It helped. The way I think about it now is the us moderates and Republicans and conservatives who are out there for her. It's like she had a cut on her arm and we were providing a tourniquet for her,
Mm.
but she had a humongous gash on her leg that was bleeding profusely. And this was the Democrats' utter loss of working class, non-educated voters. This was what turned the election. It was like average working class people had
Yeah.
a choice between a fucking prick and people who they think look down on them. And they chose the prick. And Democrats need to address this.
Yes, this is something I wanted to ask you about because I've heard you say this a lot for I think since we met that
Yeah.
both parties have turned on the working class. And I see that, but at the same time, and perception and reality sometimes don't matter. I think the reality, this is a perception issue more than reality because the policies of Democrats have always, I would argue, benefited the working class and those people, the programs they put together, the things that Biden did, the things that Harris stood for. But because the narrative is so well crafted by the right and by media that don't push back on this, it doesn't matter. So the right are so message focused and saying, Democrats hate you. Democrats never support you. Democrats do this. They don't, they let all the foreigners in. All they care about is they, them, not, blah, blah, blah. And it's such a self-fulfilling prophecy that I think even Democrats now believe that, even though the policies that they're doing are the policies that help those people. So even like Chuck Schumer was on TV saying, yeah, we don't speak to the working class, but all their policies do.
So there's truth in what you say, especially when you talk about economic policies. And in another time, you and I would have a great discussion about really how much democratic economic policies help the working class. But
Yeah,
there's truth in what you say. The problem is Republicans, Trump and MAGA, were able to paint Democrats, and they've been able to do this for a while, as out of
yeah,
touch with some of the cultural stuff and two big issues that working class people care about: immigration, the border, and crime. And it's not fair because MAGA and Trump lie about these issues.
yeah,
But these are issues that Democrats have been wrong on and or not addressing. In like some of the woke stuff, like Erich, the Trump campaign spent like $300 million on a transgender ad.
yeah,
Utter fucking bullshit. Uh, but it's not Kamala's fault. The Harris campaign ignored all that. Every
yeah,
day in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, every day of this campaign, there were ads targeted at people saying, Kamala Harris wants you to pay for transgender operations for transgender prisoners in jail. Boom,
yeah,
boom, boom, boom. Every day they're being bombarded with this, and there was no response from Democrats. It's kind of like a few years ago when one or two people on the left said, defund the police, right?
yeah.
On my right, because this is what I used to do. The right pounced and tagged the whole party with that. And the Democrats don't fight back on those issues. They
Yeah.
need to.
Well, I think what we have to adapt because this messaging, the strength of the right messaging and the energy behind it is so laser focused on those kinds of things. They just say them all they create a reality that doesn't exist. So
But
Democrats
let me
need to
push
do
you
that.
first. Let me push you for a second. I love talking to you. You're a very great. You're a wonderful conversationalist. So take like Springfield, Ohio, Erich, right?
Yeah.
A town of 60,000 people. In the last 5 years, 20,000 Haitian migrants have been put into that town.
Yep.
99% of these Haitian migrants are good people just looking for an opportunity. And they're working, going to church, doing it all. 99% of the Americans living in Springfield, Ohio are good, decent people. But
Mm.
you take a town of 60,000, you put 20,000 Haitian migrants in there are going to be problems:
Yeah.
financial, safety, education, everything, resources. Trump and MAGA look at that and they fucking tear into it and lie
Yeah.
about it. They're committing crimes on every street. They're eating your pets. But the Democrats, and this is happening all over America, not just Springfield, Ohio, the
Mm.
Democrats haven't even talked about that issue. because it's gotten worse in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Well,
So they chose the demagogue who lies about it.
yeah. Well, it's not that it's gotten worse, it's that it's happened and then some towns are probably better at dealing with it than others, and then integrating people and making people aware and all of those things. And yeah, it's perfect red meat. You've got, especially with that
Yes.
group, you've got a group of black men and well, black families, and they speak a different language, they have different accents. So it's the perfect setup for racism and
Fear of the
xenophobia.
other. Yes.
Yeah. When these are people that are saving the fucking town because the town was dying. And that's why they came there, because there were jobs there. I'm sure I'm sure the welfare state of Ohio isn't exactly pulling anybody in, would be my guess.
And you know, it's weird, Eric. Kamala Harris actually did better than people thought in Springfield, Ohio. But it was the working class people around the country who got pissed off about Springfield, Ohio. But to your point, most of the people in Springfield have recognized over the last
Yeah.
5 years that these are good people filling a need.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
But
even
but
the
but
governor,
but
yeah.
no, but you know what the biggest problem is, Eric? Again, I go back to Biden. Joe Biden had an incredibly accomplished first term. Joe
Yeah.
Biden couldn't fucking talk. 80% of a president's job is communication, the bully
Yep.
pulpit. We have been absent that for 4 years. So Trump and the Democrats could say our economy sucks. Eggs cost $90 a dozen. They could, and we didn't have Biden for 4 years telling Americans
Yeah.
how this economy was going. And Kamala Harris had to pick that up in 3 months.
Yeah. I mean, if Biden had been 10 years younger, I think this wouldn't have happened. If he
And he waited too long, correct, to get out?
Yeah, he should have gotten out. I mean, I quite like the Alan Lichtman, keys to the White House. I was a fan of the keys, and obviously, having a contested primary is one of his keys. So I'm sure I've talked about this before on the podcast, but Alan Lichtman, he's got 13 things that if they go one way or
Yeah.
the other, it's successfully predicted every presidential race, with the exception of the 2001. And so he's got a track record, and it made sense. One of the things you want to keep on side is keep your if you've got the incumbency, keep the incumbency. And it did make sense. And then, he did well at the State of the Union. And we thought, all right, he can pull this over. He's old, but he's accomplished. And the people I've interviewed who've met him said that he's not as sharp as he was, but he's still in charge. But then that fucking debate.
That fucking debate.
I watched that. I don't know if I told this. No, I probably told you this. I watched that with my Trump supporting family in America. I was in the States for that.
Oh, you did not tell me that.
No. The only good thing
Eric,
is it's a state.
He watched the minute Biden walked on stage, you knew something was off.
Yeah. And, and Trump is incomprehensible
Yes.
all the time, but it doesn't matter. Well,
So look, to put a bow on it, we elected a lawless, un-American psychopath. We elected a horrible human being. We elected an insurrectionist. That's bad, and that's horrible. And by the way, Eric, Kamala Harris did what Donald Trump is never capable of doing. She conceded. I accept the results of the election, but all of this needs to tell Democrats they don't need to panic because he didn't win by a lot. But Democrats need to do some real soul searching. To lose to that guy again.
yeah. But how do you win when you're dealing with constant lies? They have a different fucking reality. You can't stand up and say one person standing next to you goes, the sky is blue, and then the other is the sky is red, and they continue to say the sky isn't blue, and they say the sky is red over and over and over again. How do you have a democracy when no one agrees what the reality is?
Real problem, and that's part of what I do with the social contract. You're right.
Yeah.
But I'm this close to becoming a Democrat. Only
Come to us. Come to us.
Come to us. Well, we laugh with the Democrats, except Tea Party Joe Walsh. But
Yes.
if only to teach the Democrats how to fucking fight.
Yeah.
Eric, there are two kinds of voters who voted for Trump. There are the MAGA, where I come from, the base, the true believing crazies. Right. 99% of them are unreachable. But remember what I said about 15 minutes ago? There were a lot of people who voted for Trump who said, I know he's a bad guy, but
Mm.
Those people are reachable. And the Democrats didn't give them a real option. With them, you got to fucking fight. You got to fucking fight. They're not eating cats and dogs, you son of a bitch. How dare you say that about people here just to get a better life? Those people are reachable, but who is doing that? Who is
Yeah.
saying that? Not Joe Biden. What's your thought, Eric? I love the fact that Kamala Harris tried to appeal to our better angels and
Mm.
say we're better than that. But maybe she needed to punch more. I don't know.
I think so. I think we have to develop that the same fighting technique, the same laser focus, and the same aggressiveness, with the advantage of that generally, obviously there's always
Truth.
exceptions, that the Democrats are actually dealing with a reality that is true. And, they don't have to make shit up to make the argument. You can fight on prescription drug prices. You can fight on,
Yeah.
reasonable, fair and balanced migration, all of those things, which are actually true and are the best parts of America or can be the better parts of America and all of those kinds of things. I'm wondering if, because I was always like, well, Bernie could never win. You can't be that progressive. You can't be that out there. But we kind of need to have, because that's what Trump has been successful. He's attacked the status quo, which you've been telling me all these years. People don't want the status quo anymore. Trump tore it down. Now he's
Yeah.
building it back up with more of the status quo in his billionaire fucking cabinet. But it doesn't matter because it looks like he's changed the status quo. So how do Democrats do that? Do we need to be more liberal or just more vocal? Are you going to
That's
become a
the
Bernie supporter?
that's Eric, that's the $1 million question. So my cowardly answer is you need to become more populist. Does
Yeah,
that mean a far left populist or more of a centrist populist? I don't know, and I don't know that there's a difference, but the Democrats somehow have to recognize this populist moment and they need a populist fighter.
yeah,
And you're right, Eric, that the truth is generally on their side. I'd also argue that even on these hot button issues, most Americans are with them. The
yeah,
Democrats don't fight about them. And I go back to like transgenderism. The MAGA position on transgenderism is it's a mental sickness and it shouldn't exist. It's
yeah,
not real. Most Americans don't believe that. Most Americans believe I love and embrace my gay, straight, transgender Americans. Let them be who they are. Let them live their life. When it comes to women in sports and locker rooms and bathrooms, come on, let's find common sense solutions.
yeah.
That's where most Americans are. That's where the Democrats should be.
Mm,
So even on these culture war issues, most Americans are with them. I need somebody out there fighting for them.
yeah. And Biden couldn't. I mean,
Couldn't.
yeah, I don't, but I don't know who that fighter is. I don't know if there's time for that person to come forward, I suppose, for the next presidential race. But in the meantime, still, it needs to be done.
It
Do you
needs to be
see
done.
with the approach the Democrats have taken? Because there haven't been the big marches against Trump because he did win the popular vote. I think it did take the wind out of sails. Um,
By the
but in
way,
the
by
same,
the way,
but
by the way, Eric, can I make one
mm,
really important point? And I think
yeah,
you'll
yeah,
agree with me. This is why, and again, I'm a right winger, but I deplore the Electoral College. This is why the Electoral College is wrong.
yeah,
The only reason Trump won the popular vote is when you look at the numbers, tons of Democrats in California, New
yeah,
York, and my state of Illinois did not vote
yeah,
because they knew Kamala had those states.
and
That's a
that's
flaw in the Electoral College because the
oh yeah.
popular vote isn't accurate.
Yeah, I did a lot of work with Democrats abroad trying to get people to register to vote because you vote in
Yeah.
your home state and they'd be like, well, I vote in California. My vote doesn't count. I'm like, yes, it fucking does. It is a point on the board. And there's other issues as well on the
Yeah.
ballot, but it makes a difference. And I really thought, yeah, he'll lose the popular vote and he'll win the electoral college if it's going to happen. So even though it's not a massive win, like he keeps saying,
It wasn't,
but it's
but it was
the
more than people thought it would be.
the strategy of people. So they were saying he was a fascist before he won. And there's a lot of people who are kind of like, well, you said he was a fascist before he won, and now you're not saying he's a fascist. And Biden is standing with him, and Kamala certified it. I still think he's fascistic. I think he is still wants to be he's a wannabe fascist, if a bad one. I think the people behind him are Christian nationalist fascists. And I think we shouldn't stop saying that, even though he won. But obviously, it's hard to say that because people did vote for that.
So I think I'm with you on this. I think he's un-American. I think
Yeah.
he's a fascist. I think he's an authoritarian. And by the way, that's what I said during the campaign. That's what Kamala Harris said. That's what Bill Clinton. That's what Joe Biden said. So he wins. The
Yeah.
distinction here is we who lost accept the results,
Yeah.
but we do not accept him. There's a
Mm.
difference. So he won fair and square. The American people spoke. But fuck Joe Biden. You called him a fascist, a threat to democracy. And a week after he wins, you invite him to the White House. Don't fucking normalize who he is. Joe Biden shouldn't go to his inauguration. Kamala Harris shouldn't go to his inauguration. And I don't want to sound like a baby, Eric. He didn't go to theirs. He didn't even acknowledge Joe Biden won. You cannot normalize who he is. I
Yeah.
still believe he's a threat to democracy. So
Yeah.
don't go to his fucking inauguration.
Yeah, I don't know if it's, I mean, because again, it's, well, Democrats do this every time, and this is why we are like Charlie Brown in the football. We try to govern, we try to do the right thing, and you're dealing with a party, especially with Trump and MAGA, who don't give a fuck about the right thing. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about the law. So
Well,
how do you act like a grown up?
do the right thing when it comes to our elections.
Yeah,
Because if the American people don't accept the results of our elections, which is where MAGA and Trump are now, let's
yeah,
remember, Eric, if Trump lost right now, he still wouldn't be accepting the result of this election.
yeah,
We can't be like that or our democracy's done. But then draw the line there. Hey, I lost. We just elected a fascist.
yeah.
But then don't normalize who and what the fascist is. So accept the election results, but that doesn't mean you go to his inauguration. Joe Biden is such a fucking institutionalist.
Yeah.
Merrick Garland, by the way, Eric, Donald Trump should have been on trial 2 years ago for trying to overthrow the election. Merrick
Yeah.
Garland, our attorney general, is such a fucking institutionalist. These are not normal times. Don't be an institutionalist. Wait, this guy has pledged to overthrow our institutions, Eric. Why are you being an institutionalist?
Yeah. I agree with that. I think they thought that was so egregious in what he had done on January 6th that he would never be rehabilitated, and so they didn't want to create the precedent of charging a former president. So they thought he would just go away, but they forgot that he won't go away
Yeah.
because he is a psychopathic narcissist, whatever he is. I have something maybe that I can offer as hope that his agenda will.
I don't believe you.
This is my hope that truly believe, and this is in your old wheelhouse in Congress. I think we will be saved by the fact that your fellow House Republicans are so utterly fucking incompetent that they will barely be able to pass anything, if at all.
I
Is that going to be what saves us?
think there's some truth to that. I think that combined with this is the slimmest margin
Mm,
that a majority party has ever had in the House. So I think we're going to get 2 years in the House of incompetence and chaos. I
yeah,
agree with that. And the most important thing that can be done right now, just electorally, is get back the House in 2 years.
yeah,
Democrats cannot take back the Senate in 2 years. Everybody's focus should be on getting back the House in 2 years. But Dems got to be proactive. And by the way, Mike Johnson, the speaker, is going to
mm,
need Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the
yeah.
House, to pass shit. I don't think the Democrats should make it easy for Mike Johnson and the Republicans.
Well, if they do, if they don't start fighting like the Republicans fight, and not close the government or threaten to, but stand firm and well, just like we don't know yet, as we're recording this, whether or not the Jack Smith's report is going to be released because it's tied up in the courts. But Biden could just release it because he's president of the United States, and the Supreme Court has decided the president is a fucking king, so he can release it. If Joe Biden doesn't do that, that's the institutionalist letting us down again.
It's going to
So
happen, by the way. Merrick Garland last week said he would release the January 6th part, that report, not the classified docs report. So
right,
it'll
but
be out if it's not
but
already out.
but I thought there's a chance the Supreme Court might step in. but and try and block it. And if they do, that's where, because the Supreme Court is such a fair arbiter of,
Well,
judicial
that's where
ethics.
Biden or Garland should just say, fuck it, here it is.
Yeah. I mean, and if they don't, but that's the kind of thing we have to do within the law, within the actual law, not the made up law that Trump and his cronies have, do those things and not rely on institutional norms because those institutional norms are fucked. And if we don't start pushing back on those, yes, we'll be here for a while. But I do think your old Freedom Caucus mates, I mean, they barely elected Johnson again to speaker, and that would have thrown off Trump's electoral count and everything else.
You're damn smart, my friend across the pond. My old Freedom Caucus mates are loaded for bear. And this is the great irony. They're where I am philosophically on spending.
Yeah.
And even though they are loyal to Trump, they have shown that they will break on these issues. They gave him Johnson. They didn't give a fight for Johnson, but they basically said, when it comes to the debt limit and the budget and everything bad, man, we got to do it this way. So they will be a real problem for Johnson and Trump. And Erich, it's weird. We've never been here before. Trump is a lame duck from the moment he's sworn in. We've never had that.
Yeah.
Now, use your imagination, because there will be serious people trying to say, fuck the Constitution, he should run for another term. That's
Yep.
a real issue. But
Yep.
he's going to be a lame duck, and you'll see Republicans on issues pull away from him.
Yeah, I do think they would make a hard push to say that he hasn't because of the rule that you can't have two terms, but it doesn't say consecutive. I do believe that they will. Well, he's already kind of joked about it the way he jokes about all of his law breaking. I think they would make a hard push for that, and he would try and run again, except for the fact that he's going to be in a Biden position in another year or two, and the cognitive decline is going to be so severe with him that it would be hard. That's the only thing that I think will stop them from trying to get him to run for a third term is his cognitive decline.
Stop people around him.
Well, stop the whole thing from happening because I think even Trump will. You can't be at that level and that intensity. I mean, just look how it's taken Biden. Look at how all those guys go in with, dark hair and come out with gray hair. It's going to take a toll.
I'm going to give you one big difference. None of this takes a toll on Trump. I mean this. Because unlike you, my friend, and me, and Joe Biden, and most damn near everyone we know, we are capable of shame. Donald Trump's secret sauce is he's humanly incapable of shame. I mean, I pull my hair out every day when I do things that are bad, or I feel bad about the stuff that's going on, or I feel bad that I wasn't honest with my friend. Trump's gone through his whole life never feeling bad about anything wrong he's done. I mean that. I think that's kept him kind of in better shape. Weirdly.
Maybe eating all that fast food, the microplastics have kept him something.
And he doesn't present as old like Biden presents as old because he's so fucking crazy.
Yeah, no, it's a different kind of old. But I cannot believe that after he slips into his 80s, that it's not going to be some impact there. But no one else. I don't think if no one else could have done what he's done. J.D. Vance, Ted Cruz, any of the people who might have been a candidate instead of him, no one else will be able to pull off this mantle, I don't think. It is a uniquely Trump thing that he can skate through bullshit after bullshit after bullshit.
Well, I agree with that completely. He's unique in that regard. But if the Republican nominee this year had been Nikki Haley, she would have won going away. If the Republican nominee had been Ron DeSantis, who I can't stand, he would have won going away. I think because of the populist climate we're in, and the Democrats are really weak. Hey, Erich, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but the Democrats, and I wrote about this a week before the election, the Democrats have not had to address their issues for 8 years because the Republicans have been so batshit crazy. I think any normal Republican would have won by more than Trump won. But they couldn't, you're right, they couldn't get away with what Trump gets away with.
I mean, Ron DeSantis, I mean, it is so awkward. I think his awkwardness, I think Nikki Haley would have been a viable candidate. But I've always, again, before the Trump era, my theory was always the most likable candidate wins. Even Trump was more likable than Hillary in some aspects, in a media
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
And that has held true. And Biden was more likable than Trump at the point, last time around. And I don't know this time if
We
because
wanted,
there's no reality.
no, we wanted a son of a bitch. We wanted a pathological liar.
We wanted to invade Greenland, Joe. Tell me, I think the reason we need to take Greenland and Panama is because of their egg farms, because the eggs grow on trees in both of those countries. I think being able to harvest the trees, eggs from the source will fix the source of the egg price problem and make America great again.
So two responses to Greenland and the Panama Canal. The beauty of it is it just reaffirms again how his followers are just cultists. Like
Mm,
a big part of why he got elected, most of his supporters have been MAGA, make America great, extract ourselves from the rest of the world, focus on America, man, build a wall around America. Who gives a
yeah,
fuck about the rest of the world? MAGA, MAGA. And then Trump gets elected. Now he wants to conquer the Western Hemisphere, and MAGA MAGA's out there saying, do it. So they don't have a set of beliefs. They only believe in him.
yeah,
That's clear. And look, again, Trump is Putin. Trump,
yep.
remember what he said. For anybody who doesn't think Trump really would use military force against Greenland, remember what he said when he first found out Putin invaded Ukraine. He said that was a fucking genius move.
Yep. He wants to be, yeah, you're right. He is admired these people who are taking territory. He sees
Yes.
Putin take territory. Why can't
Yes.
I do that? Why can't
Bingo.
I take what I want? Greenland would be a valuable asset to the United States strategically. We should have it. That's what we would have done 100 years ago. So we should do it now.
Do it. And when China takes Taiwan, what moral position are we in to say don't if we take
Yeah.
Greenland? Come on.
And so, I mean, I've got some people that have tried to be on this. Some colleagues of mine in the media space who've tried to be on the. They say they're liberal, but they're on the right wing side of the fence, but they've also realized because one of the people I'm thinking of is Ukrainian born and speaks Russian and is against Putin, and he eventually came out and said, "Well, I am going to support Trump because I think he would be better for Ukraine." I'm like, really?
Oh,
You think so? Look what Trump's doing. First thing he wants to do is replicate what Putin does and take territory because he thinks it's cool.
if yeah, Trump is better for Ukraine if you think Putin's better for Ukraine because their
Yeah.
position is the same.
Yeah, and I know we're running out of time, so we teased about this last time, but at some point we'll have to talk about the Middle East because
Huge, Eric. That was a big thing.
But
Yeah.
and and I think for the people who support the Palestinian cause who voted for Trump, fucking nuts, absolutely fucking nuts.
I'm someone who is uber pro-Israel. I don't
I,
believe in the two-state solution, but politically, I agree completely with what you just said. If you are an advocate for the Palestinians, it was nuts to vote for Trump.
yeah, I mean, just listening to what he's saying about if Hamas don't release the remaining hostages, that he will rain hell on Hamas.
Yeah,
Like, what did they think he was going to do?
true.
He
But
moved
again,
he moved the capital to Jerusalem. Look at the deals it's just insane.
but again, you and I substantively disagree on a lot of that. But politically, there's also so much bluster with Trump. He wants to take credit for a hostage deal that Joe Biden is probably about to bring to the finish line.
Yeah.
Just like he wants to take credit for an unbelievably fucking great economy he's inheriting. Same
Yep.
thing.
Well, but the thing is, I mean, this is again credit to Joe Biden. Joe Biden, I think, won't care who takes credit for this peace deal because he knows it's important to have it. And if that's what gets the deal across the line, he will allow that to happen and won't, you know.
Agree with that. Agree with that. Agree with that. But Joe Biden's ego has decimated his legacy.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. But it just shows how hard it is to give up power. Joe Biden is fundamentally, I would hope, a decent man, as decent as somebody who becomes president because that takes a special kind of narcissism and other kinds of things. But on maybe Jimmy Carter was the one exception to that. God rest his soul. So, but just shows you how powerful, how hard it is to give it up. Here's a good person who's done most of the right things, for the country, but still basically it wasn't until it was just could not face anything else.
Agreed.
Oh, dear.
Agreed.
So what I took out of this, I'm going to let you go here and get on with your day, and is that you are going to become a Democrat and become our advocate and messenger. That you will be the one who's going to say it, straight up say it.
I don't know
That's the
about that
path,
yet.
Joe.
I don't know about that yet, but I'll leave you with this, Eric. Look, for people like me and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, before the election, we had four choices. We either fix and save the Republican Party, we
Mm.
launch a new party, we become conservative Democrats, or we stay out here in homeless land and we fire after MAGA every day. The Republican Party can never be fixed. It's gone. There's no appetite for a third party. So the only two options are become a conservative Democrat or fire at MAGA from an independent spot. It'll be one of those two. But Eric, to your point, and you and I think are brothers on this, fuck people laying down right now. We need to be the resistance. We need to resist every fucking authoritarian thing he wants to do. No kings, no
Yep.
kings here, no kings in America. Come on.
And he's going to give us a lot of things to resist against, which I
Yes.
suppose will keep us busy. But it's a
Yes.
good fight, and I'm still really glad you're there doing it, even if it must seem really depressing after the next few
So
months.
depressing. Thank God for tequila. Thank God for
Yeah.
tequila and dogs. Hey, Eric, I
Yes,
love
the
chatting
dogs.
with you. You're so good at
It's
what
great.
you do. Thank you, my friend.
It's great to catch up. See you next time. So there we have it. Another amazing conversation with Joe. It's always great to catch up with him to get his perspective, being on the ground, having campaigned for Harris, having really put it all on the line to try and get her into office. Uh, uh, you know, it's nice to know that he, like me, thought that she was going to be able to pull it off. What we need to do, how we get to the next stage, what we do in this fight, and how we resist was really interesting to talk with him about. I agree with him on so many different things regarding strategy. Maybe not all the politics still, but we're going to get him there. We're going to get him into being a Democrat at some point. We will bring him over. But thank you to Joe for coming on the podcast again. Thank you to Mark, the producer, for putting everything together. Thank you, as always, dear listener. We'll be back again next week. I've been Eric McElroy. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.